Chapter 255. At Nathan's command, the Peleta knights silently yet quickly nodded and commenced to move, vacating their posts with startling efficiency. From within the carriage, the two servants who had been eavesdropping failed to hide their mixed emotions and met each other's gaze. Assassins from Ariel? The third prince seems intent on assassinating Prince Ajane entirely. What in the world will become of me? You're worried about your safety after betraying us, Jen? Am I not allowed to worry about myself? Damn it. Whether the prince returns to Nolan or not, I need to return to my family. If you die, consider it paying for your sins. Betrayal from someone who's afraid of that. Interesting. What was that? Aren't you a spy from Durban? Are you really in a position to say that? You're the one who betrayed the prince most out of all of us. And that's why I'm calmly waiting for death. What's your problem? Jen, enraged by Melbourne's cold, sarcastic comment, breathed heavily with fury. This was the first conversation they had since being confined in the carriage, and there was no warmth between them befitting allies. I have always disliked you, Melbourne, always acting as if you were the only one serving the prince. Who would have guessed you were so deceitful? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this situation. At that moment, sensing the rising tension inside, someone outside knocked on the carriage door. The two servants immediately fell silent. But Jen's eyes were still full of determination, desperately searching for a way to survive. I have been wronged. My crime, even when revealed, is not so grave to warrant death. Wait for death quietly? No, I can't die unjustly like this. Judging by the situation, it seems unlikely that Prince Ajane will set foot on Nolan's land, so I must seize any opportunity to escape this place. While harboring their individual thoughts, the carriage sped on, much faster than before. From the moment they crossed the boundary of the Great Serene Forest, everyone felt a change in air. Wading through the dense undergrowth, where even a path for a single person was barely visible, was more exhausting than anticipated. The thickly intertwined trees and bushes, enough to block out the sun, were a significant obstacle. Even more problematic was the thick, concentrated scent of vegetation that filled their lungs with each breath. The scent of a forest that hadn't been maintained for nearly 1,000 years was like a swamp composed of odors. Either who grew up in a deep forest, the elder siblings with their strong natural instincts, and the mages who had been stubbornly researching in this place for years, could ignore it and continue without any particular discomfort. However, for those who were visiting for the first time, even breathing in the forest was a struggle. I feel so lightheaded. I thought all plant smells were pleasant, but who knew they could be this overpowering? Kana mumbled, clutching the cloth over her nose and mouth as she trailed the mages. I feel the same. Even though the mages explained before we came, the reality is worse. It would have been a little better if we could ride horses. Gakane sighed in agreement with her. No matter how used to the misty wind horse they were, it was impossible to properly run in the vast Great Serene Forest, a place too difficult for even a single person to traverse. As they prepared to set off, the look in Gakane's eyes became somewhat wistful, perhaps missing the horses they had left behind at the inn they originally intended to visit on Kishir's order. In a situation like this, I'm not sure we can move properly if monsters appear. I feel so dizzy. Try to cover your nose and mouth tighter with the cloth. If you feel too ill, let us know. If I invoke the divine power, you may feel a bit better. Ah! Lusan, who was in the worst condition among the group, muttered with a yellowish, sickly face, leaning on a tree and retching. At this, Aemon, who had been walking slumped at his side, also began to gag. I'm sorry, I'm a priest, yet if I keep doing this. If you're feeling weak, you can ride on my shadow. The health of the priest is the health of all of us. No, I can't impose like that, but I appreciate the offer. The bond among the comrades indeed strengthened most during hard times. Either watched his struggling companions, then moved closer to Kishir, who was walking silently ahead, his hat pulled low. Are you still okay? Calling Kishir just you in a situation where they had agreed not to call him a commander in case the mages might hear felt a bit weirder than usual. Whether I am or not, surprisingly, I'm just the same as at the start. There was no need to suspect it as a lie. Despite having been in the Great Serene Forest for quite some time, there was absolutely no change in Kishir's stride, as if he had lived in this place since his birth. The man was walking lightly. Under the cloth, he smiled faintly at Either and slightly turned his head. And you? Either quickly hid his twitching fingertips by making a fist and lowered his head. I am okay too. As I mentioned earlier, I seem to adapt quickly, maybe because I have lived in the mountains. Good to hear. Actually, on the second thought, it's a bit disappointing. It seems strange that Kishir would say it was good to hear and then suddenly change his words, but the reason was soon revealed. If you were struggling, I could have carried you. In any situation, Kishir was always Kishir. His casual demeanor, even more pronounced than usual, made him seem like someone out for a casual stroll. Either looked around and was relieved to find that no one else had heard that audacious statement, then lowered his head again. Even if I had struggled with the adjustment, I wouldn't have imposed on you in such a way. You have been in my arms before, so why are you being so shy now, all of a sudden? This time, it was truly something the others should not hear. Instead of responding to that, Either looked around once again, then raised his voice slightly to change the subject. I'm truly relieved that you seem to be fine, as you say. I will fall back now. If you feel uncomfortable or sense anything strange, please let me know right away. Whether he realized that Either was intentionally ignoring him and retreating, Kishir slightly lifted the corners of his mouth more broadly. Either slowed his pace, moved aside from the group, and then approached Prince Ajane, who was walking a little distance away. He was someone Either needed to be attentive to, for a completely different reason than Kishir. Are you okay? I have been here before. Thanks to that, I have learned how to endure. A low voice emerged from beneath a worn hat. If you couldn't bear it, you wouldn't have chosen to come here in the first place. Although the words were comforting, they didn't provide complete reassurance. Perhaps, sensing the careful scrutiny of his own expression, Ajane broke the silence after a moment. Is he all right? He was, of course, referring to Kishir. Yes. Truly remarkable. I heard that his health hasn't been well and he had been staying in the north until he finally showed up in the capital a few years ago. Things are completely different from the rumors. The tail end of the voice, laced with a bitter laugh, cracked with dryness. Either didn't know what to respond and simply continued to move in silence. It seemed Ajane didn't particularly expect an answer, maintaining his silence as well. The sound of Lusan retching again came from the front, and the young prince started a conversation again. Does he always lead the way? Pardon? I'm talking about him. You asked me to watch, and I have been. I may not know much, but I have noticed that he always takes the front, leaving others behind. I thought it was because he needed to guide the way when riding, but why is he in the most dangerous position now? That's... Yudhit turned his head in the direction Ajane was looking at. Just as he had said, Kishir was always near the front of the group. When Nathan was guiding, Kishir was just behind him, and since the faithful adjutant disappeared, he had not allowed anyone else to stand in front of him. Typically, higher ups preferred safer, middle positions where they could see everything, making Ajay's question a reasonable one. But that's if he's not Kishir. Without any explicit order from Kishir, everyone found their place according to his position. Whether he was in the front or behind, the members naturally thought that where he stood was his rightful place. The way Kishir had been until now had made them trust his intentions. They believe that wherever he stands, he will not be in danger. Not in danger? Isn't it your job to protect him? Then you should prevent him from taking dangerous positions. Well, is this another thing I will understand over time? Like, it's not about following power? The belief based on power and the belief from what he'd observed thus far was a little different. As Yudhir was hesitating to choose his answer, a sudden commotion erupted from the front. The mages, who were far ahead, started to shout. "What's happening?